I feel like we shouldn't be so far away from her.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to move. I can move.
We can move down to
That
you.
didn't matter.
You say right there, I'll move. I'll move.
Well, I didn't want to sit
I'll just get right in the middle.
in the mayor's seat there. so-
I'll sit right beside you because you're prettier than me.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
That's fine. That works.
All right. Man, this is official.
So Christian, we'll just follow the agenda.
Okay,
You
so,
let us know whenever.
You're good.
okay, we are good. We are good. Okay, it is 6:03 and we're going to go ahead and start. So I will call this meeting to order. It is a meeting for the Economic Development Subcommittee for the Commission on Community Relations and Development with the City of Goldsboro. And we're called to order, and I'd like to start, if we can, with introductions. So we'll just start at the end with you, ma'am. And if you'll tell everybody your name and just a brief little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Washia Lancaster. I'm actually a resident of District 1. I've been here in the city for over 10 years. I'm employed with the Department of Social Services, and I also sit on the Commission on Community Relations and Development. So,
Thank you. Thanks for being a part of this.
thank you.
I'm Scott Satterfield. Work for the City of Goldsboro's downtown Goldsboro Development Office. And yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for being a part of this and coming on. Also, Miss Amy Bauer, she commented that she is here. So, Craig Folk from Wayne Community College, he has been invited and accepted to be a part of this subcommittee, as well as Mr. Carl Martin and also Miss LaShonda Perkins.
Correct.
Dr. Perkins has agreed to be a part of this.
She has.
Okay, wonderful. So why don't we just start off by discussing, and she actually is here, Dr. Perkins is here too, so she commented on the Facebook feed. So thank you for tuning in. Why don't we just start with a discussion about what the needs are concerning economic development in our city, and anybody want to throw anything out there on the needs portion or opportunity for improvements?
As we discussed in our, we had our last meeting, we talked about several things. We talked about, homelessness, we talked about poverty, we talked about job development. All of those are great things. I think there's all things that the city need to work on. But I think, as you were saying, we need to kind of like home, focus in, and hopefully the subcommittees will address each of those things one by one, and hopefully bring back some great information that, we can include into our economic development plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big need is clearly workforce. I think if you ask our industry partners, throughout the county, what they need most, it's a skilled workforce and a sort of a consistent, dependable workforce, sturdy, in other words. And so I know that's a big one. That's certainly not all there is, but that's a key one. I think that trying to focus exclusively on economic development, I think that there's some real opportunities for entrepreneurship, because the great thing about entrepreneurship is that you don't have to have a degree necessarily. You don't have to have, you just sort of have to be, geared that way, have a great idea, have an idea that's worthy of investment, whether that's from a bank or from partners. And so I think anything we can do to try to make sure that every part of our community's talent and creativity that can be brought to bear in the form of new business development is being brought to bear, And so trying to have a culture for startup and for scale up, business. And I just think it's very leveling, it's very leveling. And so I think there's some tangible things we could do to try to bring capital and make sure capital gets distributed a little bit more evenly throughout the county and throughout our city. And I think if we were committed to that, we would probably see over time fruit from that,
I agree.
Right. And so those are a couple of areas, and I'm sure there's a much longer list, but those are some key areas that I think about.
When you think of economic development?
Yeah.
And I was wondering, does the city have any type of programs or incentives for people to start businesses? I was thinking, thinking about business, it'd be good, of course, we have COVID right now and not really able to do that, but if we could have like meet and greets, business where people can kind of get together and discuss, hey, I do this, and then maybe eventually, offer some type of internship for people who are looking to start a business, say, hey, I can kind of walk you through the steps in starting your business. Maybe that's something the city could consider, something like that.
Well, and the Small Business Center from Wayne County is a free and very strong resource that I don't think enough people know about.
Right.
And the amount of knowledge that you can get is worth so much. In other words, if you had to turn around and go pay for it, consulting wise, it's really hard to even put a number on that.
Sure.
I don't think the city has incentives for new businesses right now. I do think that depending on what some of the regulation is on CDBG money, I do know that there's for LMI citizens, there are opportunities out there through CDBG paths for, depending on the type of use, type of business.
Yes.
If real estate's involved, there's some things like that might be, you could see in the form of an incentive, but that comes really via the federal government, not through city government. But as far as mentorship and kind of helping people really understand, the small business center is a really great first step. But I think those activities like you talked about, can we get people in a room together? Can we get them talking?
Right.
Can we get them?
Exactly.
I know the Chamber of Commerce is also a really great resource for some of that.
Yeah.
Not, we could, more could happen for sure, but they do a great job at least of networking people together through, and I don't know how the pandemic is, I'm trying to think now. But used to, they'd have these after-hours events. I'm sure they will again.
Yeah.
But it's great for networking, especially up-and-coming businesses, to let people know hey, I exist, and things such as that. So
The chamber, I'm on the board for the chamber, and we just started meeting in person with our board of directors meetings last week. So with a virtual option, hopefully soon, as the year goes on, vaccinations roll out, we could do our after hours again. So I know that's something that Kate's really looking forward to, but it was good that we could have an in-person meeting, offer that option.
Right.
Dr. Perkins, I just want to say what she's saying on Facebook, that many may know about these resources, but transportation is a barrier for individuals on the southern end of the county.
yeah, that's true. And I know that the Small Business Center, at least the previous director before the pandemic was going out to the southern part of the county and would have kind of an open day. I think he was traveling he was at like 4 different locations, which I think another resource that's important here would be the library. Because transportation does go to and from the library, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Can somebody confirm that? I don't know.
I believe it does. Yeah, you mean the public transportation?
Yeah.
Yeah, GWTA runs, do you know, Felicia, if GWTA runs to the library?
I did not know
Yeah,
the schedule.
I believe it does.
I believe it does.
I think it does.
Yeah.
They do this really great program called Ice House, where it's like startup curriculum and tries to network a group of maybe 12 to 15 people.
Okay.
And that would be a really great kind of entry step for someone on the entrepreneurship side. But she's right. Dr. Perkins is right that transportation is an impediment for making sure that access to those resources are as viable as possible. I know that the Small Business Center is also taking steps to make a lot of their resources digital, and but it still remains.
That's something we probably could share, like on our commission Facebook page, the digital resources and stuff like that. Roll some of those out.
Yeah, because I think the problem is, people just don't know. A lot of people, a lot of people do, but there are many more who don't know about these resources. So I guess if we can, definitely put them on our page, or I'm not sure if the city already has them on their page, so people would know that these exist.
What are the needs concerning economic development in our city? I kind of talked to about this at our retreat, and I know that it's something that's being worked on, but it's having that economic development plan. And I know it's in the works, but I think that's something that's super important. Just like we talked about at the retreat, if you have that plan, I think the trickle down effects of having that plan would really speak to a lot of the other issues that citizens brought up, like homelessness, mental health issues. So I think that is probably one of our biggest needs.
Yeah, and the only piece of pause that I give to that is that, I think you have to focus on mobility, right? And the tricky part is, like, an economic development plan is not a plan to be able to solve all of these challenges.
Right.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I hear people discussing that's my only, like, I am 150, I feel about it. I'm totally behind it. And I think that you have to I think it has to be a full end-to-end person. In other words, every range of income, every range of person, every demographic, young and old. But I just wonder sometimes if the expectations of what's going to come out of that are more than what an economic development plan is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because homelessness, for example, is a huge and complicated issue all by itself. And clearly, the world hasn't solved it.
Yeah.
So an economic development plan in Goldsboro is not going to solve it, but I think making consideration for the least among us to make sure that they can take next steps and have mobility, I think is definitely critical.
Another, and I want, Dr. Perkins just said something that I want us to come back to, but another need that I think, and you touched on it when you're talking about the bigger issue that is homelessness, is I think we really, the economic development in our city, when we talk about that, I think we should talk about the collaboration between the county and the city. Because, for instance, homelessness, just giving that as an example, I think the county could really bring a lot of knowledge and wisdom to how we could combat and help serve that population and demographic, even though they are the majority of the homelessness is in the city limits. So I think if we can pull the county in on issues like that and economic development, I really would love us to just foster more collaboration with the county and keep that open. But Dr. Perkins, she says that you made a great point focusing on the human capital diversity. Could you unpack that?
Who are we talking about, me?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I just think that I think that instead of, when you're building pipelines and you're trying to create activity for the economy, to me, it's like, I don't think you should leave anybody on the sideline. And I guess that comes, this is a personal opinion, but that comes from a belief that creativity it can come from anywhere. And it comes from everywhere. And if we're trying to make sure that the best ideas make their way to the marketplace, then we want to do the work to build the pipelines into every part of the community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I sort of look at it as trying to pull that, you know, and that's hard work, man. That's super hard. It's not easy just because, you know, somebody like in these seats like this decides, hey, let's do this thing. And a lot of times people think, oh, it's done. Man, it's like that's the kind of work that it takes. You have to do it week after week, day after day. And somebody has to cultivate that and tend to that. But, you know, the principle of making sure that every pipeline you're building for ideas, in other words, if I'm colorblind to good ideas and I am income blind to good ideas and I'm geography blind to good ideas, then it means that I'm going to put my lines out everywhere I can, which to me is the most fair way you can deal with people. And then, you know, once you kind of have got a pipeline where you've got good ideas that can start to flow, then you have to sort of do the work on the back end of making sure that you can help build the capacity to see those dreams come to fruition. So then you're dealing with things like, okay, access to capital, which is a huge issue. I mean, a huge issue and a complicated issue. But most people won't know that. I think it's like in the last 3 years or so, I think there's been like 6 SBA loans given out in Goldsboro. 6. Well, the SBA 7A loans reduce the risk to the lender by 50%. And we're still not getting people lending. So that means probably one of two things or both things are happening. Number one, maybe people aren't personally credit worthy. You know what I mean? There's like these minimum thresholds, but most people don't even know what that means, you know, to be credit worthy or to be, you know, to meet a bank's criteria. Because if you don't have a decent enough credit score, they won't even listen to your business idea. Like it won't even matter because that's like first base,
Yeah.
right?
It is.
And so usually a bank wants to see, you know, credit score, personal capacity to pay a loan, and such as that. Well, you got a lot of people who, when I got a good idea, they'll quit the job that they have, and then they'll go try to do this business. Well, that's a bad move for you.
Right.
So there's some education in there, like, you know, trying to raise people up on one hand to strengthen their personal lendability, if you will. And, you know, you think out of the SBA loans, I think I read that in the United States, about 2% of those loans, I shouldn't quote these statistics, but they're going to African Americans. 2%? Well, then that means we're going to have to find some alternative sources. Because we probably ain't going to change banking in, you know.
On our subcommittee.
Right? So, but we do know that there are people out there are networks out there who are being creative about how they're providing that, you know, capital. So it's like, let's go find those sources and then let's help raise people up all at the same time. And almost any way we can make those two things happen is likely to lead to at least a little better success. But, you know, whether you have been in prison or whether you don't have a home or whatever it may be, if you have a good idea, the market needs the idea, and it should be blind to, at least at the beginning, to the rest of those circumstances, right? And then, you know, then you work to try to make everybody as sturdy as they can be. But there's a lot of work in that.
Yeah.
But that's just one little aspect of entrepreneurship and trying to make sure that there's equal opportunity across the board for entrepreneurs.
So, you know, kind of piggybacking off what you said, you know, I realize that our plan has to be realistic. You know, that's one thing. Listen to, I mean, like you were saying about homeless, we wish we could just solve that problem. but our plan have to be realistic, and and what we set. Of course, we want to aim for the stars, but we have to keep in mind that it does have to be realistic. And also, what you were saying about reaching everyone. So this is where I feel like community ambassadors will come into place. Definitely
That's a good idea.
partnerships with different organizations, because it's almost, the Housing Authority had a great plan. It's called a community coach. So what they did with their Jobs Plus program is they found a resident in their community who they felt that people trusted. And, that person was able to kind of get out there and spread the word about their program. So I think community ambassadors are very important, within each district, or however, we were to do that. But, you have to kind of go to a person that people would feel comfortable opening up to, who they trust. They can say, hey, I think I have this idea, but, I'm a little nervous to share with them, but I'll share it with you. And then they can bring it back to us or whoever, and we can share that for them. I think a lot of people are afraid or a little intimidated to come before a board or a group of people that say, hey, I have this idea. But a lot of residents do have a lot of great ideas that I feel that would benefit the city greatly.
I think it's an excellent point.
I think that's a really, really good idea. Dr. Perkins says finding ways to give offenders and people with criminal backgrounds a second chance, strong collaboration with workforces who support second chances. So I think that ties into with the the blindness aspect that you mentioned, Scott. Let's move on to point B. What are the first steps that you think this subcommittee needs to take? And Dr. Perkins, feel free to comment on there. Any ideas, first steps that this subcommittee should take?
Stakeholders. I think you need to identify who your key partners are going to need to be, throughout the community. And I know that this is a subcommittee for community relations and development, right? But I think you have to understand that if you're going to be blind economically, you need to be blind all the way up, just like you're blind all the way down.
Right.
You need to, like we need to try to, include the people wherever they are that can help build out opportunity, and make sure the people who need it, and try to connect those things. And so that I think there's probably stakeholders on both sides of that, right? That seem like would be beneficial to at least get their input. And I think industry, commerce. I'm sure there's a housing component as has been touched on, but I think the housing component is like, that's another subcommittee almost, It's not
We have a subcommittee on housing too.
right? So, let them, we know that that's a huge issue. We know it's a big need.
Right.
Who was it said transportation?
Dr. Perkins, yeah.
Just trying to maybe build out a kind of a list of who the key, and then start really diving deep with those folks.
Yeah, Dr. Perkins actually said, find out who's doing what in our community.
Right.
So, what do you think, Felicia? Would you recommend we put together a list of, I'm sure there's a list somewhere already of who's doing what, huh?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, I don't know that it's as
Cohesive?
grouped as you
Mhm.
might think,
Right.
which is why sometimes it's hard to acquire that information. But I think that you could quickly make a pretty good list, and asset map, if you will. That also keeps you kind of from duplication, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Like, for example, if you've got community coaching, if you've got a system for community coaching or mentorship, and you've got people with some experience doing that, then you go to the housing authority and say, How can we help you scale this? Right? Like that would be an example of using a stakeholder who's already doing a thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it's kind of like don't reinvent the wheel. You know, if it's working for them,
Yes.
and if we can glean from what they're doing, and you know, have them share with us what they're doing and how it's successful, you know, I think that'd be great. Great idea. A good place to start.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be some groundwork because Dr. Perkins too says unity is important to engage in the efficiency and effectiveness of this work. Something we discussed at our retreat was Chief West came in and, you know, just again talking about homelessness. There's so many nonprofits and organizations in the city they're doing, you know, stuff week in and week out, getting everybody on the same page to collaborate and work towards, you know, a bigger long-term goal.
Well, and you know, I think like that's where and I could be a stick in the mud here.
Come
But
on.
I look at that issue and I say that's a United Way issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like in other words, they are trying to tackle that problem, and they have the capacity. Like they have more of a capacity to tackle that problem than this subcommittee, for
Yeah.
example. So I look at it and I say, in the midst of our economic development discussion, how can we contribute to what the United Way is already doing to build a collaborative, cohesive unit of nonprofits in addressing the nonprofit space? Because the nonprofit space, I'm not saying that it's irrelevant to economic development,
No.
but a lot of times what I've learned is, and I deal with a lot of people who come in wanting to start businesses. They're thinking nonprofits because in poorer parts of our community, that's all they're seeing.
Right.
And it's like we need to let the nonprofit space deal with the nonprofit space, right? And try to help them and contribute every way we can. But we don't need. I don't feel like this subcommittee should really be trying to get into building out the nonprofit relationship issues.
Of course, I agree.
Hey, we support you. We love you. We're trying to help people build for-profit relationships.
Yeah.
To grow their mobility, and there's a role for nonprofits to play in that. But I don't know. You know what I mean? I feel like that anything we can do to help the United Way succeed in what they're already doing, and I'm not saying it's just United Way, but that's basically United Way's mission,
Yeah.
right? And they have a strong presence to do that.
That's a good point. And broader than just this subcommittee, like you said, I think that could help us on our commission.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that's something I think we should explore is a little bit more on our commission with United Way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me just say that I agree with Scott and Dr. Perkins. I really like that she brought up finding out what others are doing in our community, but I think, like as kind of Scott said, focusing in on what this subcommittee's mission is.
Yeah.
You know, not just kind of all over the place, but
Right.
economic development is what we're talking about. So I think it is important. The city does put out a community resource list, but it is mostly geared towards those nonprofit kind of social services type of
Yeah.
opportunities out in our community. So I think it is important. If there are any other groups out there that are focusing in on what we were talking about here, then those will be the people that we want to bring to the table as stakeholders and partners. So great point. Thank you so much.
Well, and you know, like that list that you were just talking about that exists for nonprofits, you know, it might be, I think, a worthy goal, and Christian, you were talking about this a second ago, but maybe having a list like that for the, you know, private sector, right? In other words, for business development or for anything not in the nonprofit space that can provide opportunity or education or capacity building for either employment or job skills or entrepreneurship or whatever it may be. In other words, if it's not maybe in the nonprofit space, anything else, where's maybe a resource list that could get the knowledge to people, you know, like you guys were talking about. That could be one tool that we use that nonprofit list as a model for one way that we could communicate.
Right, so then that exactly, directly goes back to what Dr. Perkins said about finding out who's doing what.
That's right.
And then Washia said so that we won't, reinvent the wheel, so,
Yeah.
very good discussion, subcommittee.
Yeah, I think this is good, and you know, it's even sparking other ideas. I'm glad that you brought us back to focus on the economic development, but even the possibility of partnering with this subcommittee with credit unions or something like that
That's right.
to do some loan training for small business or
That's right.
business plan writing. I mean,
That's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, that's it.
To me, that's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff that it really gets the ball, that moves the needle,
yeah,
I think. And trying to do that in a creative way and in a way that's going to attract people, you know, be a magnet to people. Because what happens is that most people who think about business training or education, you know, everybody wants to fall asleep. Like, I don't want to spend my time doing that.
Yeah.
yeah,
But like, I know if you're involved, it's going to be
The
next
thing is,
level, man.
I'm getting excited because there's so much good things going on, and I think of people like Latanya and Pink Piggy Sweets. Just an awesome business, and there's so many entrepreneurs like her out there in our city, I think, and so
And those people are more willing than you think to help.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of time, but I think if people were genuinely interested in their perspective,
yeah,
they would be happy to share. And they, like, Latanya would be happy to help somebody else who's trying to come up.
I think of Dave and Michelle Tufano,
Yep.
they would definitely be, and they.
I mean, we've got,
I know it's
all the
when we
way
start
up
thinking
to
about it.
Mr. David Perry,
Yeah.
who runs one of the most successful businesses, in the world. But these people give of their time. Most people don't realize it, but
Yeah.
they give of their time to help younger people and to help people who are trying to come up. It's just, do we have a pipeline to get the people who are serious to the people
Yeah.
who have the capacity to really help them go from where they are to where they'd like to be so their dreams can come true?
You know, what comes to mind for me is spotlighting these people. Let them spotlight, hey, this is where I started out. I started out, whatever the circumstances, lower income, I had this great idea, this is where I am now. So people can see like a roadmap, like, okay, I'm here too, I can get there. People need to see and hear,
Yes.
what people have been through. So it kind of lights the fire in them
That's right.
that they, want to do the same thing.
I'm
So,
getting excited, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now I'm just even more starting to see just the good stuff that could come from this.
Yeah, and I think, taking what you just said, like the launch that's out there and the ice house that's out there are two methods by which those things can happen, because those two programs are already trying to attach to lenders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like if we already know that there's a private equity group over here. It's a group of 10 friends who's
Right.
willing to put $10,000 in a pot to help invest in a new business
Yeah.
locally. Or it's a local bank who says, you know what, I'm going to commit to be an SBA lender locally. And then if you can get people through, say, those programs, it readies them more for those lending opportunities at the end of the line. So that when they finish, they're not just better and more prepared, they're also funded.
Right.
What were the names of those programs again, Scott?
Launch is one. It was stopped in pandemic last year. We had started with our first cohort, and that is a very strong partnership among, a lot of entities, but the city, the county, the Development Alliance, the Downtown Goldsboro Development Corporation, the Chamber of Commerce, the University of Mount Olive Business School, Miller School of Entrepreneurship out of East Carolina University. I mean, there were a lot of entities. The Wayne County Public Library. I hate to leave somebody out, but I'm just saying there was a big partnership put together that agreed on the principle of what we're talking about. And
And the other program was?
the other program is Ice House, which
Ice
happens
House.
through the public library, funded through some grant funding, I think, out of the state. But they do basically the same type of thing, but it includes existing entrepreneurs, like stories from existing entrepreneurs, and it helps them build their business plans, think through how to look at a balance sheet, what a profit and loss is, and how to, what's your viable product? Do you have a viable product? Anyway, that's a long answer, but
Is the Ice House, is that with Camellia Walker?
it is.
Okay, I'm wanting to, I never heard of the Ice House, honestly.
And the community college, did I even mention the community college as a partner earlier?
Yeah.
They're the biggest one. I mean, they're the ones who pay for it, so, so I suspect that that's gonna start up in the fall. It's gonna restart in the fall. And Ice House, I don't know what the cycle of that is, but
I shared a link on this, in the comment thread of this meeting, because I never heard of Ice House. I was hoping you'd explain, but it seems to be paused, and
it's just an entrepreneurial, it's like a boot camp for
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. And it helps equip people very quickly with some key skills, so they don't have to go, they're not going to business school for 2 years or something like that. But you do have to make a commitment, once or twice a week to go and be part of this. And and I just think that there's some credit, discussions there. Kind of, I know for launch we brought in bankers, and we let the bankers actually talk to the entrepreneurs and explain where the banks are at and where they're coming from. And what you'd realize is that banks are not a good first place to go if you're thinking about starting a business. They're not going to lend the money. I don't care who you are, almost. Unless you're like a doctor and you don't need the money, But like all the rest of us, I'll put it like this: I've started 2 businesses, and I was profitable every single quarter of those businesses, and I did not have credit, not even a credit card from a bank, until the last quarter of my business life.
And I'm thinking about what you were saying about, that pipeline, kind of reconnecting everywhere. And this is where, unfortunately, and we hate to admit, but there's different stigmas and bias. We think that certain communities, they don't need to know about this, they probably wouldn't be interested, but it's so important. That's where we have to put that information out. Because in order for this city to be the great city that we know it can be, everybody has to be included. It can't feel like this part they don't need to know. They do need to know. And I really think that's been the problem. I think certain people hear about this, certain people don't. I think everybody needs to know that, hey, this is equal opportunity. You have a chance, if you want to become involved in this, this is how you apply. This is who you talk to. I really think that's important. Everybody needs to know that these programs exist.
Agreed.
Absolutely. I definitely feel your passion, love it, and that's what it should be about.
Right.
So I think we got some good first steps ironed out, and I'm sure others who couldn't be a part will probably comment or email us and continue the discussion. So moving along, how often do you guys think the subcommittee should meet? I know we already have everybody on this subcommittee has a lot going on. I do realize that.
But I think, honestly, maybe since we're kind of just beginning this, maybe monthly to start.
Okay.
Because we kind of got to get the ball rolling on it, you know what I mean? But I'm not sure if that's going to
Do you think that's realistic?
conflict.
It's up to you guys.
Or I think you have to minimum every few months, I would say.
Or quarterly, or
Quarterly,
to
yeah.
start, and then once things get rolling, really rolling, or every 2 months.
yeah,
For a month, 4 weeks kind of comes fast these days.
definitely.
Yeah.
But I think I'm saying that to say it's easy to start something, but if people don't see progress, if people don't see that, oh, okay, they really mean what they're saying, it's just like another, okay, another committee, okay, another, you know, I think it's important that people to see that we're dedicated to this and
Yeah.
we have an actual plan. We're just not up here spinning wheels. You know, they have to see that, you know, we're really putting forth some effort. But like Felicia said, you know, we can start off quarterly and, you know, really kind of be working behind the scenes as much as possible.
But I agree with you, and so what Scott said, it takes a lot of hard work, so, you know, the work has to be put in.
Right.
You know, it can't consist of just meetings.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I guess that, you know, it depends on how you define the work, right?
mhm.
I mean, if that work can happen in the context of a meeting, I'm more than happy to meet and do that collaboratively, on a more regular basis if need be. And I mean, I know it's a commitment, but I'm prepared to commit to that. I mean, I think that part of the challenge is going to be that there's so much to this
Yeah.
that we haven't even, you know, that we don't fully appreciate, you know, and like understanding that you're going to do a lot of work for a long period of time
Mhm.
before you even get to a place where you can talk about really a plan. And it just, as somebody who does this all the time, it's going to take a lot of time because these issues are very complicated issues.
Yeah, we are.
And you know, like even the thought that everybody needs to hear what you're saying. Yes, that's true, but that is very hard to do.
And that's where that collaboration with
Those community
comes in.
stakeholders. Huh?
Sure.
You know, those community partners, even the nonprofits we talk about, we need them because
You do.
even if it's just putting a booklet into their center or having a business card there, I mean, they are basically our avenue to the city because people unfortunately go there because they need. So why not see that information there? You know, oh, what is this? And you know what I mean? It may spark interest. So,
Agreed.
yeah.
Well, I'll recommend now that with all of that said, that maybe we can meet again next month.
I was going to ask if we can meet
And-
monthly anyways.
Well,
For
next
now.
month, definitely, because, to give, the others who are
Yeah.
invited the opportunity
Yeah.
to be here.
Right.
Dr. Perkins, I know she didn't have another obligation, she would be here. And then the other two, invitees, so I think next month, and then we can have the same discussion again about how often the subcommittee can meet, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and if we like committed to 3 months of meeting monthly, and then revisit it
Okay.
or something like that, you know what I mean? That way we know it needs to be in our cycle for 3 months. And,
Yeah.
you know, maybe we re-up every 3 months or something.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think
Is
that's
that okay?
fair. Yeah, because I definitely want to get Carl and Craig and Dr. Perkins in this. You know, I want us all in the same room. You know, and hashing some stuff out. They all have different perspectives, and they all have access to different resources that I think would really help us
Right.
go forward. So, and Dr. Perkins said, yeah, but she said we don't want the work to fall by the wayside, and meet monthly is awesome for her. So, we'll just email out the next meeting date. Okay. Is there a particular day that is Tuesdays good for y'all, or would Thursdays be better, or Mondays? Did you suggest anything, Felicia?
I like Tuesdays, but I'm not, you know.
Well, I would suggest this day and time.
Okay. Okay. So we'll get that emailed out. So before we adjourn, just want to say thank you again, everybody, for being a part. I'm very excited about this subcommittee. And one thing I do want to say is that I just want us to all have each other's backs, and also when we're talking about the work we're doing, because we're going to be digging into a lot of things, even the work of the actual Commission on Community Relations and Development, let's just keep it positive, keep the excitement, and, you know, are we all going to see eye to eye on the economic development or community relations? No, but I really want to encourage everybody that if we have to disagree, when we do, let's disagree without being disagreeable, and just really keep a united front, and just stay positive about the work that's going on. Like you said earlier, Washia, we're building, there's a lot of groundwork we're rebuilding, and it's going to take a long time. I really want things to change overnight, but it's going to take a lot of work, like Scott said. So let's just work together, and I think it'll be great. So if nobody else has anything, we'll stand adjourned.